On May 10th, 2016, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End released, marking itself as the final game in the saga of Nathan Drake. However, the version that we got isn't the same one that was originally being made. Development began in 2011, shortly after the release of Uncharted 3. Naughty Dog were operating in two teams, one working on The Last of Us, the other on Uncharted 4. In November 2013, a short teaser for Uncharted 4 was released, featuring a mysterious voice and hints about the game's story. But then, in March 2014, creative director Amy Hennig left Naughty Dog. The game would go on to be reworked and finished without her. Amidst years of rumours and speculation, one question has always stood out to me. What was Amy Hennig's version of Uncharted 4? I began making videos on Uncharted 4 back in 2018, starting with simple mods, then working my way up to covering cut content. In doing so, I began finding pieces of Uncharted 4 that didn't seem to be related to anything I recognised. References to levels that didn't exist, things in the story that didn't happen. None of it made any sense, but I became determined to figure it out. I started collecting any scraps of information I could find about this other version of the game, be it things I found in the files or while searching online. Since then, I've been able to put together what is, to date, the most definitive breakdown of the game that Amy Hennig and her team were working on between the years of 2011 to 2014. Now, there are some fairly well-known things about this version of the game. If you don't know them, I'll get you up to speed. The primary antagonist, Rafe, was going to be played by Alan Tudyk instead of Warren Cole. Nathan Drake's brother, Sam, was going to be played by Todd Stashwick instead of Troy Baker. You can still hear Todd's voice in the game's initial teaser from 2013.
I lost 15 years. Buried alive. Erased.
Sam's original role in the story had him as more of a villain than the version that we know from the final game. Cutter from Uncharted 3 was also set to appear, but when the project changed hands in 2014, lots of work got thrown out, including cutscenes, levels, and gameplay mechanics. With all that being said, you're now up to speed with how much people have known about this older iteration of the game. Now we can get into a lot more detail. Before we go any further, it is assumed that you have played Uncharted 4 and remember the game's story. I won't be doing a lot of back and forth comparisons, largely due to the amount of content I have to get through in this video, so if you haven't played it, I very much recommend that you do. Then come back and things will make a lot more sense. Just a heads up. The following is what I have pieced together and reconstructed from what I have available to me, stemming from a variety of sources that I've had over the years. Let's go over the game's original story. Unlike the final game, this version didn't have a playable orphanage flashback. Instead, an early idea was to have a short cutscene showing Nate as a young boy, being dropped off at the St. Francis Boys' Home orphanage. The game would then transition, showing Nate as an adult in a small prison cell. This would begin the game's first level, the prison. Similar to the final game, Nate and Sam are in this Panamanian prison deliberately. They're looking for information and artifacts related to the legendary pirate Henry Avery. In these early level scripting files, the game refers to Sam as Broham, a placeholder name since at this very early stage in development they hadn't yet figured out what to call him. It's also worth mentioning that while Sam and Nate knew they were brothers, we the player wouldn't be told this right away. Instead, this would be something the player would learn later in the story, but when exactly, we don't know. After they've found what they're looking for, Nate and Sam are involved in a breakout. They get separated, and Sam gets caught. Nate can't go back for him. It's too late. If he stops now, they'll both be caught. With guards hot on his heels, he keeps running, making it over the prison wall and running through the nearby jungle. He then jumps from a cliff into the ocean below. 15 years later. The game now transitions into a level called Reef, and this is where we can start to see big differences in this version of the story. The level involves Nate, Elena and Sully in the Bahamas, searching for the wreck of Henry Avery's ship, the Fancy. Nate and Elena dive underwater, leaving Sully on the boat above. They swim down and search the coral reef, dropping flares along the way. After searching, eventually they manage to find the wreck. Nate and Elena navigate through the crumbling remains of the ship and find a few artifacts, including, inside the captain's quarters, a key once belonging to Henry Avery. The game would then have given us a flashback hundreds of years ago to 1695. We are suddenly playing as Henry Avery himself aboard the Fancy as he attacks the ship known as the Gunsway. The level would feature sword fighting with other pirates and using the ship's cannons to take down the Gunsway. They built Henry Avery's ship as a full playspace so the player could maneuver around it freely, even being able to climb on the rigging. This would be necessary as it had also been built to be destructible, gradually having pieces of it blown away in the battle. We then jump back to the present. Nate and Elena return to Sully on the surface with their findings, only to end up being caught by the Coast Guard. They have their discoveries taken away from them, and they leave empty-handed. One fact about this level is that after the game was reworked and the level was scrapped, the environment team still liked it so much that they included a reference to it in the final game in Chapter 12. We now have a time skip. Many months have passed since the crew were caught in the Bahamas. Nate discovers that the same artifacts they'd found in Avery's ship will soon be on display at an upcoming gala in London. Nate enlists the help of Elena and Sully again, as well as Charlie Cutter. They come up with a plan. Nate and Elena will enter the event posing as guests. Sully will be disguised as a repairman with a van and get in through the back. Cutter will already be inside, disguised as a waiter. They're going to work together to steal back the key that they found in the Bahamas. That key holds crucial clues that they need to find Henry Avery's long-lost pirate treasure. Nate and Elena get inside and make their way to the main ballroom. Along the way, they spot various artifacts on display that they recognize from the wreck of Henry Avery's ship in the Bahamas.
Oh boy. Well, here we go.
Deep breath. You're doing great.
Not a hardened thief like you.
Hey, ex-thief. I've been reformed.
Is that so?
Yeah. Besides, can't steal
what's already yours.
That's my girl. Look, we just find the key, lift it when no one's looking, slip right out of here.
Oh, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
That's a piece of cake.
Might be time for that, too. Look, no surprises, okay? Promise. Okay, Charlie, you read me?
Affirmative.
Is there any sign of the key?
I haven't spotted it yet.
Check your mic. You sound muffled.
Sorry. Testing, testing, testing. Is that better?
When they reach the ballroom, they then find the key on display, but there's too many people around. No way to grab it yet.
there it is.
Yeah. However will we get by these ropes, though?
I know they're velvet.
We might need something sophisticated, like scissors. This is actually going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the rope, please, sir.
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? It's easy.
Well,
We're ready to make the swap. Sully, you in position?
Just a sec. Bit of a hold-up.
What's that?
I said, what's a hold-up? You mind?
Sorry. Yeah, listen, as I said, I haven't heard anything about a plumbing emergency. Can't let you in.
Well, suit yourself. You can explain it to your boss and his guests when they're up to their ankles in shit.
Oh, wait. You know, it's fine. You're going through.
All right. Thanks. Good man.
At this point, Cutter shows up on the main floor. He encounters Nate and Elena, who are surprised when they notice that he has chosen to wear facial prosthetics. He hands them a decoy key hidden under his waiter's tray.
Champagne.
oh God.
No.
It's me. It's Charlie. I'm in disguise.
Not necessary.
What are you... Nobody here knows you. You should be glad I'm not wearing the ump.
The what?
What? The decoy.
Thank you.
Oh, certainly, sir. Madam?
No surprises. None.
I'll be right there, madam.
T-poses, please. That was better. How we doing, Sully?
Back on track.
Good. All right, we've got the replica. Sure glad we had Charlie bring it in.
Yeah, we never would have gotten it past those metal detectors.
All right, listen, Sonny. As soon as you're ready to cut the power, let us know and we'll get into position.
You got it. Okay. I'm going in.
I called him...
Sonny.
Called him
Listen, Sonny.
because it was soon.
The gameplay now switches to Sully. Sully's job is to navigate his way through the various staff-only and maintenance areas, in search of the electrical panel to cut the power. Along the way, he makes use of a wire tracer to help him find the correct path to take. He tries to enter the cellar, but the door is locked. With no other way inside, he radios Cutter and asks him to swipe the necessary keycard from a member of staff. Cutter tries to obtain the keycard from a character known as the High Commissioner. However, he fails to obtain it, and asks Nate and Elena to help.
He's a nimble bastard, isn't he? I just can't get close enough to him.
I'll try and slow him down for you.
They do their best to tail him, but along the way they are spotted by a character referred to as the Bahamian, who recognizes them as they were pictured in the news back in the Bahamas. His interest in Nate and Elena could spell disaster for their attempt to stay undercover. Elena eventually manages to lure him away and knock him out. Nate heads upstairs for a better view of the main floor. He spots the High Commissioner in the crowd. He points him out to Elena over the radio, and she approaches him. She manages to keep him talking just long enough for Cutter to approach, spill a drink on him, and swipe the keycard in the process.
Your Excellency! Hey! Hello!
Hello.
Oh.
Wow, it's you.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you for such a wonderful evening.
Well, you're very, very welcome.
I have so many questions for you.
Right.
About the building. It's really beautiful. Can you tell me when it was built?
When it was built? Yes, it was originally constructed in 1648.
Really?
Well, the original headquarters of the old East India Trading Company. It was remodeled in the early 18th century, though.
Oh, well, wow. I am so...
Get off me.
Just leave. That's horrible. I apologize. Are you...
Yes, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Is there anything I can get you? Perhaps a kerchief? Sorry, I can't hold it together.
A kerchief.
Kerchief of sorts. And if I would have held it, it would have been great.
Outside, some guards inspect Sully's van. They get suspicious and manage to peel off the fake plumbing company sticker on the side. Time is running out. Sully and Cutter meet up. Cutter unlocks a door and gives him the keycard, which he'll need to access areas up ahead.
Hey, Sully.
Here. Jesus, Cutter, what the hell?
How did you know it was me? None of you lot have any imagination. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey. Do you want a moustache?
I have a mustache.
Yeah. Do you want a better one?
No.
It's here when you change your mind.
Good.
Sully makes it to the electrical panel. However, he notices that it's also fed by a backup power supply, which will need to be shut off before he can turn off the main power. He radios Nate and tells him that the backup power can be accessed from the roof of the building. Nate makes it up to the roof, allowing the player to get a look at the vista of London. Nate then finds the backup power and disables it. On his way back, he runs into Sam. He hasn't seen Sam for 15 years, ever since he was left behind in the prison escape. Sam talks to Nate, who just stands there, stunned. He doesn't have long to take in that his brother is still alive before Sam leaves, briefly passing Elena as she comes to look for Nate. He looks like he's seen a ghost. She urges him that they need to return to the ballroom, but he's lost in thought. She urges him again, and they both head back. They manage to return just as the dance begins. They partner up, and the player is given a dancing minigame, having to time button presses to the music. They get closer to the key as the song progresses. Once close enough, Sully cuts the power, and Elena grabs the key. They try to leave, but don't get far before a guard notices the key is missing. With their cover now blown, Elena quickly takes off her high heels, and they start to run.
Come on.
Wait. Okay, go!
She's so bossy.
All four of them meet up outside. They make it to the nearby river and see boats, but they're on the other side.
That went well. Head for the river.
Crap!
Over there! Boat! The other side.
What?
There's got to be a way through. Charlie, pee on it. See if it's electric. Over here.
Oh, bollocks.
We just need to find something to pry it open.
Have you lost your goddamn mind?
How is this going to get us across the river?
No, we're not going across, are we?
We're going under.
Oh, God.
No. The waiter isn't afraid of small spaces. And who are you?
I'm the waiter.
Who are you?
I'm the waiter. I'm the waiter. I'm the waiter. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm the waiter. I'm ready.
They make use of an underground tunnel to get across and manage to escape in a boat. During the boat ride, Nate finds a clue hidden inside the key that leads them to their next destination, Scotland.
I don't see anybody.
Looks like we lost him.
All right, throttle back, kid. Let's not attract any more attention.
Okay. Sully, take the wheel.
What, in the middle of it?
Okay.
All right, come on.
Man, I sure hope that thing was worth all this.
It's a pigpen cipher, all right.
What's that?
It's a code originally used by the Freemasons.
And pirates.
But it's a simple substitution cipher. Anybody could have solved it, just using frequency analysis.
It seems too easy.
Got it.
Whoa, how did you do that?
He spent the last 6 months memorizing the code. Flashcards.
Yeah, it's her idea. Okay, listen to this. Between head that bows and teeth that bite, a twist of the blade betrays my flight. It's a riddle.
And a goddamn riddle.
Flight. That must mean Avery's escape.
Yeah, the head could be headlands, maybe, along the coast.
And bow? Is he talking about a ship?
Could be.
No. It's the key itself. Look. The head or bow of the key, the teeth in the bit.
And the blade.
Exactly.
Wait, what are you doing?
You're gonna break... I'll be damned.
It's a map.
Of?
I'm not sure. Greece, maybe?
Greece? No, it's not Greece. It's Scotland. Your man Avery fled to Scotland.
You really gotta lose that nose.
Not yet.
Greece.
This level once again sees Nate, Elena, Sully and Cutter team up to follow the trail of Henry Avery. They reach a derelict cathedral and spot a large stained glass window showing Saint Dismas on a cross. They also notice that a number of nearby statues hold certain clues, so they split up to look for more. They solve various puzzles and piece together an old spyglass. Nate then climbs up the cathedral to reach the stained glass window. He uses the spyglass through the window and it lines up with an old manor in the distance, making it their next destination. As this level was quite big, the development team were experimenting with giving the player access to an ATV for this area, an idea that never made it into the final game. Along the way, the group gets separated. Nate and Cutter run into some mercenaries. There is some placeholder text for the enemy's dialogue that I thought was quite humorous, so I'll read it for you. I'm freezing my ass off out here. Man up. We gotta find this guy. We better find him soon. I can't feel my fingers. What are we supposed to do when we see him? Give him a hug? What do you think? I can't see crap in this fog. It's getting thicker, too. Quiet down. I think I heard something. Look at this mushroom I found. Get that thing away from me. It's probably poisonous. Fine. That's more for me. You're an idiot. Nate and Cutter take out the mercenaries and make their way up to the manor. They get inside and find another clue. They then head back to the church, reuniting with Sully and Elena along the way. I don't know all the details about this next part, but at some point they run into Sam and Rafe, a hot-headed thief that spent time with Sam in prison. They've partnered up, and it's their mercenaries that Nate's been running into. They all decide to work together for the meantime, and after exploring, they manage to find a passage leading underground. After following the passage through a crypt, they come to a deep chasm, with the only way across being a very old and unsafe wooden bridge. They try to cross in pairs, but it breaks after only a few of them have made it across, leaving Nate to use his rope to help the others. Once they're all on the other side, they reach the door of a large treasure vault. They work together to solve another puzzle, gaining them access to the main room of the vault. They walk in and, to their surprise, there's hardly anything in there.
That's it? Did you think you were going to dive into mounds of gold like some kind of cartoon duck?
Well, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Pillock.
They manage to find some treasure chests, but those are all empty.
You're having a laugh. What?
There's nothing here.
Looks like somebody cleared this place out centuries ago.
Shit.
After searching, they find a room, ominously labelled here as the murder room. Inside are a bunch of dead pirates, and a clue that points them to their next destination, Madagascar. Oh, wow. That's a lot of dead pirates. They were murdered. Murdered? Oh, probably. Looks like this one got it with a sword. Maybe he's the leader. So he poisoned the others. And they killed him before he could get away. So, what now? To Madagascar. Just then, the vault begins to collapse. They make a run for it, dodging falling rocks and debris. Sam gets pinned and Rafe stops to help him. Sam calls out to Nate for help, but the collapsing rubble proves too treacherous for Nate to turn back. Sully and Elena up ahead call after Nate to keep running. As Rafe continues trying to free Sam, Nate, distraught and unable to help, has to leave him behind, again, just as he did 15 years ago.
Nate! I'm pinned! Help me get this off him! Nate, help! Sam! Hold on! What are you doing? We gotta go! Run, kid! Nate! Over here! Nate! No! Come back! Don't leave us! Sam! Sam! Nate! He's gone! Nate, come on!
The next level is Madagascar, and the story details become a bit hazy. There are a few pieces of concept art that can give us some ideas. We can see that Nate, Elena, Sully, and presumably Cutter all return once more. Sam and Rafe have both survived the events of Scotland and would later show up again in this level. Eventually, Nate ends up in pursuit of Rafe, chasing him through the city. I can't give you anything more specific as there really isn't much leftover information about this level. It's from here onward that the threads connecting each level to the next begin to disappear, and all I can do is use my best judgment to progress the story chronologically. At some point after the big chase in Madagascar, Nate ends up being captured and put on a boat with Sam and Rafe. They arrive at a small island off the coast of Madagascar, on the trail of the long-lost pirate colony, Libertalia. Rafe comes down to the brig where Nate is being held, and takes him up to the deck in handcuffs.
There he is. Okay, this way. Alright, you first, princess. Head up to the deck.
Nate, upon seeing the island, declares that it's not Libertalia, just as he is suddenly held at gunpoint and knocked unconscious by Sam, who is still bitter at being left behind 15 years ago, now made worse by the recent similar events in Scotland.
Samuel, this isn't Libertalia.
Do you know what it feels like to be all alone, Nathan?
You don't have to do this, Sam.
Nate wakes up sometime later on the shore of the island. Sam and Rafe are gone, along with their boat. Nate is left all alone, marooned. Nate does his best to survive on the island. He climbs to the highest point to try and get his bearings. He heads back down and builds a fire on the beach to keep warm at night. It's unknown exactly how long he spends stranded here, but it seems to be a number of days. During his stay, he finds a cutlass on a dead pirate and uses it to cut through thick bramble that blocks certain areas. He also makes use of a spear to try and catch fish, as well as relying on birds' eggs and coconuts. Eventually, a large storm approaches and batters the island. Trees are knocked down around him. Parts of the island become flooded and inaccessible. After surviving the storm, he manages to build a raft using wood from an old shipwreck and makes his way off the island. This next level is the rainforest, the same level from my video back in 2023. I'm not fully confident of where it takes place in the story. It could be a later level, but I know it takes place in or around Madagascar, so I'm placing it here. Nate and Sully are deep in the heart of a rainforest. Eventually, they become separated. Nate stumbles upon a pirate skeleton beneath a large sculpted head. From this skeleton, he finds an old flintlock pistol and a piton. Nate squeezes through some nearby vines and finds himself at the bottom of a large waterfall.
I'll be damned. How the hell am I going to get up there?
It seems that this level was developed very early on as the original vertical slice for Uncharted 4. A vertical slice is when the developers create an entire or partial playable level at the beginning of a game's development that showcases the visual fidelity and gameplay mechanics they hope to achieve in the final product. As such, at this time they were experimenting with additional melee options for the player. There is a weapon, simply named Trap, that appears to be a bola, which is a thrown weapon used to ensnare the legs of your enemies. Also, this level would feature shootable handholds. You could shoot at an appropriate surface, blowing chunks of the wall away to create new handholds for Nate to use. After seeing the waterfall, Nate finds and disarms a rope trap. Then makes his way up the cliff, reaching the top of the waterfall. There are a number of ruined temples that he must navigate around while avoiding enemies. He uses his grappling hook to dislodge a statue blocking the entrance to one of the temples. He makes his way inside and reunites with Sully.
Shit, easy.
Sully, where the hell have you been? Could use some help back there.
Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, I got a little turned around in these ruins.
You? Lost? Ugh, there's a shock.
Smartass. So, what the hell is all this stuff anyway?
Not sure. Looks Javanese, but that would make it over 1,000 years old.
Yeah, 5,000 miles away from home.
Right.
Holy shit.
Sadly, there isn't any information as to what startles them, or what exactly happens after this cutscene. As this level was being made very early on, the team were still trying to figure out exactly what kind of game it was going to be. As part of that exploration, they created some very out-there pieces of concept art. One of them has Nate and Sully being attacked by gorillas. Another has a zeppelin floating in the sky. I asked Rob Ruppel, one of the game's art directors, about these early concepts, and he was able to give me a brief reply. We blue-skied lots of ideas, like the gorillas and zeppelins in the jungle, while they worked out the story beats and the role Nate's brother Samuel would play in the story. So, after the temple cutscene with Sully, all I know is that at some point afterwards, Nate ends up being on his own again. This level is called River, and the leftover scripting text indicates that he is on the island of Libertalia, currently searching for his friends. After reaching a vantage point, he spots Sully's plane sitting in the distance, and makes his way towards it. Drake reaches the plane and goes inside, but there's nobody there, and it's been ransacked. Sam's men got here before him. Just then, he spots enemies approaching from outside. He looks around the plane and manages to find a pistol. He grabs it and heads outside. A firefight ensues. This level seems to have been quite large, and focused around traversal in a boat, specifically a Zodiac boat. There is some concept art and images that give a rough idea of what this level would have been like. Placeholder text describes that you would have been navigating through patches of reeds, causing engine trouble for the boat. Also, enemies could have been found patrolling near some caves. I'm telling you, man, there's something in that cave. You have a gun! Go take care of it! Oh, screw you! This island gives me the creeps. There would also be a moment where the boat's engine would cut out as the player approaches a waterfall. Nate uses the boat to head upriver, eventually beaching it and having to continue on foot. He finds an old mill and heads inside. Climbing through the remains of the building, he reaches the top. It's there that he gets his first real view of the old pirate colony, Libertalia. He makes his way down to the streets below and, predictably, finds that Sam and Rafe's men have managed to beat him there. He sneaks around, doing his best to avoid them for the time being.
Rafe's orders, no stone unturned, so we look again.
Hey, I don't see him out here picking through the same rubble twice.
He's got bigger problems.
He's got problems, all right.
You want to say that to his face? He's tougher than he looks, you know.
3 weeks. 3 weeks we've been at this with nothing to show for it.
Yeah, most jobs you just march in, kill the locals, and take what you want.
That's what I'm saying. All this X-March, the spot nonsense, it's bullshit.
I don't even know what we're looking for anymore.
All right. What was that?
Came from over there.
What the hell?
No. Nothing here.
Yeah, well, keep your eyes open anyway. I don't think we're alone.
Nate makes his way through the various old rickety buildings until he reaches a vantage point.
Well, somebody's camped down there. But who?
He spots Rafe from a distance and watches as he enters an old guild hall.
I think I'll pay Rafe a little visit.
Nate approaches and looks for a way inside. He sneaks up behind an enemy and grabs him.
Don't make a sound.
Go to hell.
Shut up. How do I get in the building?
I ain't telling you nothing.
Tell me.
I don't know.
Bullshit.
Okay. The roof. There's a hole in the roof.
It sounds like there was an attempt at some kind of interrogation mechanic that the player could use on enemies. Although it does seem unlikely that this would have had any wide application through the rest of the game. It could easily have just been a one-off scripted moment. Likewise, there's a moment of Nate holding an enemy at gunpoint and forcing him to surrender.
Hey, I give up, all right? I'm done. Don't shoot.
Come out of there. Don't do anything stupid. All right?
Okay.
All right. Beat it. You heard me. Run!
It's a strange diversion from the gameplay that we're used to from Uncharted, that's for sure. Using the info he gained from the enemy earlier, Nate climbs up to the roof of the guild hall and enters through a hole. He makes his way through the attic and jumps down into the main hall, coming face to face with Rafe.
Drop it.
Rafe, I don't want to fight.
Says the man with the gun. Drop it then.
I just want to talk to Sam.
Drop it! You know, when Samuel dumped you off on that island, I thought that we'd never see you again. That's wishful thinking, huh? You always turn up whenever you're not wanted, except when you're needed. And then you're nowhere to be found.
Where are my friends?
You're not really in a position to be interrogating me.
I don't care about the treasure.
Right.
I just want to find the others and get off this damn island. Now, if you're holding them...
I don't know where your asshole friends are.
Just take me to Sam.
No. No. That's not going to happen. See, the way I figure it is as long as you're alive, Samuel's going to hold out hope for some kind of a reconciliation. That can't happen. That can't happen.
Just take it easy with that thing.
You and him together again? Just like old times? No, I don't think I could stomach that. Turn around.
Rafe.
Turn around! You should have eaten that bullet back on the island.
Nate and Rafe fight each other for a while. They trade blows until Rafe picks up an old cutlass.
Did you just listen to me? Ah!
You crazy son of a bitch.
You should have never come back.
What now, Drake?
No, don't. Shut up.
Nate defends himself using whatever melee weapons are at hand, namely bottles that are on the ground and a large candlestick holder that he pulls off of the wall. The fight goes on. Nate struggles as Rafe continues his attack, and then Sam shows up. What happens after this moment? Well, to be honest, I'm not sure. My information on this scene ends here. We know that the plan in the story was to eventually have Sam and Nate heal their relationship and team up against Rafe. This could very well have been the start of that, especially considering that the name of a later moment in this level is called Back with Sam. There are a couple of cutscene names from later in this level, but other than their names, I know nothing about them. Although, one of them has the interesting name of Gateway to Paradise. I'll come back to this one later. Something I want to mention is that the colony level looks to have been another attempt by the team to create a vertical slice. This is part of the reason I have so much of it to show you. They got really far along with creating this level, such as having recorded all the player and enemy dialogue, implementing mechanics, and polishing the visuals. I don't know if they managed to finish both vertical slices, or if this one took over as the main focus at a certain point. Either way, a lot more material from this level ended up being left over. There are a couple more levels I have information on, one called Cove. Not entirely sure where it took place in the story. Could be after the colony level, it could be before it. It doesn't seem to have had much story content implemented, given how little is left over in the game files. The level seems to have been about Nate and Elena navigating around in a boat together, but no context as to when or why. The boat's hung up on something. I'm gonna see if I can find a better vantage point, see where this lets out. I'll get the launch prepped and into the water. Then there's a level called Sam's Boat. It seems to have been set after Sam and Nate have made up with each other. They're trying to take Sam's boat back from Rafe's men. Sully's on board too, locked up in a cell on the brig.
How's the old guy?
He's still in his cell.
Well, yeah, he ain't going nowhere.
Not with us guarding him, he ain't.
Sam's on board the ship. If he comes down here, we'll get him.
Yeah, we will.
Boost me up. I'm taking my boat back.
There's references to the boat crashing into various objects, suffering visible damage as a result. And that's the end of the story content that I know about. Concept art shows us that there were plenty more ideas for the rest of the game, like exploring the sunken ruins of Libertalia, and encountering devolved descendants of the island's original pirate inhabitants. Even the ending sword fight with Rafe seems to have existed as an idea, but no leftover information remains for me to go through in more detail. Apparently the team were roughly halfway through development when the game was reworked. Maybe this was just as far as they got. As for the ending, the send-off of Nathan Drake in the final game, along with the inclusion of a daughter, is something that wasn't decided on by this point either. According to people from Naughty Dog, at the time this was something Amy had been considering, but when she left the project there hadn't yet been a concrete decision made as to whether Uncharted 4 would be the end of Nathan Drake's story. In an interview with US Gamer, when asked about how the story of the final Uncharted 4 differed to her version, Amy Hennig had this to say. Just like in Uncharted 1, it was meant to be a little bit of a return to form. This idea that a lot of the story would be taking place on this undiscovered or forgotten pirate utopia island, and the detective story that we could weave through that. So all the beats, if you look at the chapter beats, with the exception of we didn't have the flashbacks to his childhood, and then we didn't have the Nadine character, but just looking at the break by break that sorted the chapters, like where they go, what was happening, that was all while I was there. Now, despite what Amy says here, as I mentioned earlier, they were planning on having a small flashback cutscene at the beginning of the game, showing Nate as a young boy. What Amy is talking about is that this small scene ended up being expanded by the new team into multiple playable flashback levels in the finished game. Also, as mentioned, Nadine did not exist in Amy's version. In the finished game, the character of Nadine works alongside Rafe in his hunt for Henry Avery's treasure. She's strong-willed and useful to him, but despite their shared disdain for Nathan Drake, Rafe's actions throughout the story ultimately cause her to turn against him. In the original version, it was Sam who had this role. He was the one working alongside Rafe throughout the story, before eventually turning on him and reconciling with Nate. When the game was reworked, it was decided Sam should be less of an antagonist and serve as more of a temptation for Nate, luring him back into treasure hunting. Sam's return into Nate's life was changed to be much more direct, and he was now placed at Nate's side for a lot of the game's levels. With Sam's original role changed, Rafe was now missing his partner in crime, and as such, this new character was created to try and fill that gap. The decision to have Sam joining Nate on his adventure also had a knock-on effect of changing Elena's role in the story. No longer would she be joining Nate on his adventure, at least not at the start. During the early to mid-game, Sam needed a bigger presence, and would now be taking her spot as companion for those levels instead. The tension in the story partly switched from Nate trying to reconcile with his antagonistic brother to Nate trying to reconcile with his wife, whom he'd been continually lying to about his adventure. Because of all these changes, they lost the character of Charlie Cutter as well, in no small part because the actor, Graham McTavish, had limited time to be on set for Uncharted 4, having to fly over to the States and record during his short breaks from shooting one of the Hobbit movies in New Zealand. This was also the situation for Uncharted 3, where he was shooting a Hobbit movie at the same time and fitting his work on the game around that schedule. The limited time they had with him to record his scenes ultimately resulted in his character leaving the story of Uncharted 3 earlier than originally planned. Fast forward a few years, and yet another difficult recording schedule, coupled with months of his work being scrapped after a reboot, was reason enough for Graham to walk away from Uncharted 4. Regardless of this, it's unknown whether his character was ever planned to be kept in the story after the rewrites took place. One thing I would like to go back and speak about a bit more is the reveal of the Javanese statues mentioned earlier by Nate in the rainforest level. It's had me thinking for a long time about what they could have meant to the story. Judging by the amount of concept art that feature these designs, it was quite an important part of the game, something that was deliberately meant to be creepy and unsettling. I mentioned earlier that there was a cutscene during the colony level apparently called Gateway to Paradise. It's worth noting that Paradise is mentioned in the final game in reference to Libertalia. However, there's also another possible connection. The statues Nate and Sully found in the rainforest level were of Indonesian origin, and if you search Gateway to Paradise Indonesia on the internet, you'll find lots of pictures like this. Now, I'm not going to go into the full history of these things, but basically these are used to mark the entrance to sacred spaces, cemeteries, temples, palaces. You get the idea. Anyway, keep these images in your mind. In Uncharted 4, if you look at things like background pictures, magazine covers, paintings, etc., you'll notice they sometimes feature concept art from the game's development. It's understandable. It's a quick and easy way to put some artwork in to flesh out the background without having to create entirely new pieces. With that in mind, let's take a look at these magazine covers from the epilogue. We can spot the large stone faces from this early concept art. Here's underwater Libertalia, also very early concept art. And over here we have... Look familiar? Now, I'm still not sure what this Gateway to Paradise cutscene would have been, but at this point I think we have a pretty good idea it would have featured these split gateways. How these ancient Indonesian gateways and statues would have tied into the story is anyone's guess. Perhaps there was an intention to reveal that the pirates were not the first people to have inhabited Libertalia. Maybe it was tied into some sort of supernatural mystery, or maybe it was none of those things. Whatever it was, it's a story thread that now, without anything else to connect it to, will sadly have to remain unresolved. Now that we've covered the story, let's move on to the design of some of the characters. Obviously, there's Nathan Drake himself. There are a few outfits that he had throughout the development of Uncharted 4. An outfit for the underwater dive, one for the gala, as well as Scotland. But his main design during development had him dressed in a pirate-inspired outfit. He had a white top, similar to Uncharted 3, and a leather baldric used to holster a sword, a red sash around his waist along with a gun holster, dark trousers, and a pair of brown boots. This is likely what he would have been wearing after his time stuck on the island alone, having to scavenge for supplies from the wrecks of pirate ships and bodies. Development images show him wearing this much earlier in the story, but that can be easily explained as them not yet having designed or implemented the rest of his outfits at that point. Sam is up next. There is concept art showing a similar design of pirate-themed clothing, as well as a prison outfit. His face is clearly based on that of Todd Stashwick, who, as we already established, was the actor playing Sam at that point in development. There aren't any images of what these concept outfits may have looked like in-game, or if they ever even planned to use them. The only images I have show him wearing a purple shirt with a chest holster, dark trousers, and dark shoes. By the way, Sam was not intended to be bald. It's just that these particular images had character hair rendering disabled at the time they were taken. Next is Rafe. In case you didn't pick up on it before, it's worth mentioning now that this version of Rafe is not the petty rich kid that we know from the final game. Instead, here he seems to have been more akin to Eddie Raja from Uncharted 1, a hot-headed thug with his own band of mercenaries. Early concept art had wildly varying designs for what he could have looked like. They seem to have settled on this: a tank top with dog tags, a pistol tucked into the front of his trousers, which are in turn tucked into a pair of boots. His face also seems to have been based off of his actor, Alan Tudyk. A detailed close-up of his head also reveals a scorpion tattoo on his neck. Charlie Cutter had an updated character model made as well, which actually ended up being repurposed as his main multiplayer outfit in the final version of Uncharted 4. As for the rest of the characters, I don't have much information on them. A lot of them were still using very early placeholder models, some even directly from Uncharted 3, such as Sully. Also, on the topic of characters, it's been speculated that actor Dominic Monaghan may have been involved with the game at some point. He was seen at the Naughty Dog studio and with the rest of the main cast around the time of Uncharted 4's early development. Despite this, I haven't seen any evidence of him ever recording anything for the game, and there has never been any confirmation of his involvement. Let's now move on to gameplay. Some of this I covered earlier, but we'll go over it again just to be sure. Uncharted 4 seems to have been going through a big push to change up the normal flow of gameplay from previous Uncharted's. As noted in Jason Schreier's book, Amy Hennig wanted Nathan Drake to go for half of the game without using a gun, in response to criticism that he kills too many people through the course of a usual Uncharted adventure. As such, they seemed to be placing a much bigger emphasis on melee combat. seemingly an expansion of the work they did in Uncharted 3 to give Nate more ways to deal with people hand to hand. There was a melee weapon referred to in-game simply as a trap, but used the menu icon of a bola-type weapon, typically used to ensnare an enemy's feet. Similarly, there was a menu icon for a walkie-talkie, which was likely a throwable item that would have made noise to attract enemies, although I have no concrete information on this. They were also looking into ways to allow more stealth, adding places for Nate to hide in the environment using tall grass. A slide mechanic was also being worked on, allowing the player to propel themselves forward like Mega Man. Not only that, they even had the ability for the player to grab an enemy from behind and interrogate them for information. There was an attempt to make the climbing and traversal more in-depth too. The idea was to have different sized handholds that would require different button presses as to not fall when climbing. They were experimenting with the idea of shootable handholds, which involved the player shooting at walls to create their own handholds to climb up. But they were finding it difficult to implement them properly into the levels, such as finding ways to make sure the player didn't run out of ammo before encountering one of these shootable surfaces. Speaking of climbing, there was a mechanic for using multiple pitons. The idea was that the player could use two at the same time to traverse otherwise unclimbable areas. It's possible that there was also a mechanic of leaving them behind or losing them. The presence of them on the heads-up display implies to me that the number of pitons the player carried would be changing frequently. They had a grappling hook too, although it proved quite clunky to use, as the player had to manually aim where they wanted to throw it, as opposed to the single button press it became in the finished game. Drivable vehicles is another idea that the team had. Many experiments were done on just how many levels should feature vehicles for the player to use. There was originally an ATV that could be used in the large Scotland level to get around faster. Cars and bikes were an idea for the chase with Rafe, as well as boats to navigate certain parts of the island in the late game. Taking another look at the early heads-up display for Nate shows a 3-segment health bar on the left. This is definitely one of the more bizarre inclusions to this version of the game. It looks like his health was still regenerative, as opposed to needing health kits or anything like that. I don't know enough about it to say for certain, but perhaps it would have just taken longer for his health to regenerate if it dropped below one of the segments. This, to me, puts forward the idea of making the game more punishing to the player for being reckless in combat, incentivizing strategy and stealth more than the traditional run-and-gun gameplay the series is known for. Still, having this instead of the usual red screen effect from the previous entries really seems like the wrong move for an Uncharted game to make. I can see why this idea was abandoned. During Uncharted 4's original development, we didn't get to see very much of it in public, just a small teaser at the end of 2013. This teaser showed a map of Madagascar, including some hints about the pirate themes of the game, and had a voiceover by Todd Stashwick. However, this wasn't their first idea for what the game's teaser should be. Originally, they were planning to show a lot more. This is a work-in-progress early iteration of their teaser trailer. This trailer has no voiceover, but shows glimpses of various locations and things that would have featured in the game. There's a pirate flag, a grave in Scotland, a tree in Madagascar, a skeleton in a gibbet, an overgrown statue head in the jungle, abandoned pirate treasure, the wreck of Henry Avery's ship, and the underwater ruins of Libertalia. The trailer ends with a shot of Nathan Drake, captured. Someone approaches him from out of frame, then cuts to the game's logo and a map of Madagascar. Our mystery person at the end is very likely meant to be Sam, and I wouldn't be surprised if the voiceover done for the final teaser was originally meant for this one, or a variation of it at least. If you put his voice lines over the top of this trailer, it works a bit too well.
Some chains can never be broken. I lost 15 years, buried alive, erased. You left me, rotting in that hellhole, and never looked back. But you can't outrun the past. And when it catches up, when all your lies collapse around you, I'll be there, sifting through the wreckage. You owe me.
In March 2014, Amy Hennig left Naughty Dog, as did several other people who had been working on the project. We still, to this day, don't know the full story of what led up to this. A long-standing rumour is that the people behind her departure were Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley, who took on the project after she left. This rumour originates from IGN, who included it alongside their report on Amy's departure back in 2014, claiming that Neil and Bruce had forced her out. A few days later, Naughty Dog's co-presidents Evan Wells and Christophe Balestra put out a statement on their website. We feel it necessary to clear up a very important point that was unprofessionally misreported when the story broke. Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann were not involved in what transpired. It was very upsetting to us that dozens of stories were run linking back to the same hurtful accusations in the original report. As co-presidents of Naughty Dog, we are responsible for all studio affairs. Normally we wouldn't respond to rumours and speculation on matters that are internal to Naughty Dog, but because the personal reputation of two of our employees is being damaged, we needed to set the record straight. There is nothing left to be said on this subject. Many years later, in 2020, the person who published the story at IGN publicly walked it back, claiming that there was pressure from others at IGN to include the rumour in their report, despite it being an unproven claim, and amounted to being nothing more than gossip. IGN later updated the original article to reflect this information, adding that IGN editors made follow-up attempts to confirm or deny the original source's assertions, but those attempts were ultimately inconclusive. Given these findings, IGN can no longer confidently stand by this reporting. We apologise for the working practices that led to this story's original publication. Endless rumours of sabotage and other such conspiracies are all that really surround the discussion of Amy Hennig's Uncharted 4. Whenever it's brought up, someone will usually insist that there had to be a single reason or person that is responsible for everything going wrong, but these things are rarely that simple, and as you'll hear in just a moment, even people that worked on this game have differing opinions on what the project's issues ultimately were. A good place to find insight into what happened is in Jason Schreier's book, Blood, Sweat and Pixels. He interviewed a bunch of current and ex-Naughty Dog employees for his chapter on Uncharted 4's development. When trying to piece together what went wrong, here's what he wrote. Uncharted 4 was struggling. Naughty Dog's vision of itself as a two-team studio able to develop two different games simultaneously turned out to be too idealistic. Throughout 2012 and 2013, the Last of Us team needed to dragoon more and more of Uncharted 4's developers, leaving Hennig with just a skeleton staff. "We were hoping that we'd have two completely staffed teams," said Naughty Dog's co-president Evan Wells. "They'd just sort of leapfrogged each other, and we just couldn't hire enough talent fast enough to keep up with the demands of the game's expansions in terms of expectations of scope. At best, we maybe got to 1.5, or probably more like 1.25 teams." At the beginning of 2014, as Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley finished up work on an expansion for The Last of Us called Left Behind, the studio went into emergency mode, calling several meetings in an attempt to diagnose the problems with Uncharted 4. There are conflicting perspectives on what happened next. Some say the Uncharted 4 team didn't get the staff and resources it needed to survive, because The Last of Us and Left Behind had vacuumed up so much of Naughty Dog's attention. Others say that Amy Hennig had trouble making decisions, and the nascent game wasn't shaping up very well. Some who were working on Uncharted 4 wished that there was a more cohesive direction. Others thought it was perfectly understandable, considering how small the Uncharted 4 staff was, that the game hadn't coalesced yet. One part of the story is indisputable, however. In March 2014, after meeting with Naughty Dog's co-presidents Wells and Christoph Balestra, Amy Hennig exited the studio and didn't come back. "It's something that happens at different levels," said Wells. "It happened to happen at a fairly high level, but we have turnover for various reasons throughout the studio. And Amy's a friend of mine. I really miss her and I wish her well, but things weren't working out. So we went our separate ways, and we had to pick up the pieces." Later, Jason Schreier adds that several people who have worked for Naughty Dog say Druckmann and Straley stopped seeing eye to eye with Hennig, and that they had fundamental disagreements on where to take the Uncharted series.
I remember this one game prototype, and I won't say which one, but there was a project that had been in production for 2.5 years, almost 3, and corporate had basically said, you know, we're having questions about this. And the franchise was successful up until that point. There was no reason to question this thing would be successful. But at that time, the leader was surrounded by people who were always saying yes, and they were living in the glory of their success, going on to their 4th project. And now, you know, they're delivering this deadline for a demo, and I think they just took it for granted. We've already had success before. We're going to have it again. We've done this 3 or 4 times already. So we're just going to be this great thing. And one director from another team was asked to weigh in. And I wasn't there. I only heard the story. And that director walked in the room full of all these people. He picked up the controller and he said to everyone, "This game sucks." And everyone was quiet. People were flustered. The director of that project was angry. And you could just, you know, from what I understand, you could cut the tension in that room with a knife. And then somebody said, you know, that's really rude of you to say something like that. And the director fired back. He said, "No, but the game sucks. There's no objectives. It's hard to follow what's going on. The controls are clunky. This isn't like you guys. This isn't what we delivered in the past." And in the meeting, people walked out of there really upset. I mean, and even this director, like, I'm surprised he had the gall to say something like that. You know, he was disrespectful, not by calling anyone names, but he was disrespectful in that he was so adamant about how bad it was and insulting the work itself, but it got personal. And then, but here's what happened. Corporate looked at it. They decided they were going to push forward anyway. They're going to, you know, ignore the naysayer. Corporate looked at it and they said, you guys are in trouble. We're going to pull funding from this if you guys don't fix this. And as a result, the director of that project was pulled away, even though they had been successful. And the naysayer, along with 2 others, were put in to help fix it. And then the game had to be redone. But then 2.5, 3 years later, so going on 5 to 6 years total of production, the game became a success. But, you know, one thing that I appreciated about Naughty Dog very early on was there was this philosophy of, yeah, what that person said may have sounded rude about the work, but they were right.
Contrary to what some believe, the new team wanted to keep as much of the work done on Uncharted 4 as they could, especially as they weren't initially granted any additional time to finish the project, and the hopes were that they could still hit the expected 2015 release date. The problem was that a lot of the work that had been done, while good on paper, just wasn't coming together. Most of the game up until this point had been designed around a plethora of different mechanics that varied between levels, and didn't have a lot of harmony with the rest of the game. The dancing minigame during the gala, for example, seemed like it made sense for that level, but in reality it felt out of place and wasn't very fun. It was one of the game's many moments that felt too gimmicky, so it went by the wayside, and the new team focused instead on trying to define a set of core gameplay mechanics. This would include a revamped, easier-to-use grappling hook and piton, as well as an updated stealth system, and a drivable jeep that would feature in a few levels. They also wanted to move away from the hand-to-hand combat focus of the game, and instead include more gunplay, which was difficult, as many of the levels that had already been built were designed around the idea that Nate wouldn't have a gun, so they would all have to be rebuilt. Uncharted 4 needed help. It was in a bad state in regards to the lines of communication, the pipeline, what people were doing, and it didn't feel like it was making the positive forward progress it needed. It was daunting. We couldn't take what was there because that was part of the problem. There was a breakdown both in the gameplay and the story side of things. Both sides needed a lot of work. When we first came on the project, there were some areas that were so big and so large that you lost any sense of pacing and you weren't sure of where you were going, and again, that's not something we wanted to play, so there were some adjustments made. Each decision was sometimes a stab in the heart. Oh, I can't believe we're cutting this thing that me or someone else had spent literally months working out. It was definitely a hard transition, but every time you do it, if you're honest and you look back at it, then you know what? That was the right decision. This is a better game because of it. It's more focused, more clear. The transition went relatively well and quickly. They had a plan, a clear plan, and they expressed it to the team. It instilled confidence. As sad as it was to see the team that had such a long history with the franchise leaving, we could see the future and the light at the end of the tunnel.
The bulk of my work is still in that game. I've worked on it for 2 years.
So the script, a lot of the script is what you wrote?
Not the script. So, because here's the thing. So, I mean, what you lay out first is like the thing I showed you. It's sort of like, what is the premise? Mm-hmm. What is the object of desire? What is our historical mystery? And what is the meaning behind that? where are we going to go? What is the trail, the plot trail that's going to get us there? Obviously, I had the brother in there. I had the characters in there. And I had cast and shot some stuff.
Okay.
But then when I left, they wanted to do different things. And look, if you're writing it, you better not be trying to fill in somebody else's blanks, right? You know, obviously they wanted to write it a different way. They saw the characters a different way. They recast some actors, got rid of some, lost some. And therefore, I mean, obviously there was nothing they were going to use from my stuff I shot, but there was nothing they should have used from the stuff I shot or could have even used.
Sure.
So in terms of the actual scenes, dialogue, anything I shot, no, they set that aside. But overall, the progression, I mean, the major difference is, since the game's out now, I mean, like, pretty much that I was hoping to do, like, pirate flashbacks. I loved the idea of actually flashing back to Henry Avery, but I mean, it's kind of a crazy idea because asset-wise and everything, suddenly you have to make Black Flag as well as Uncharted 4. Sure. But I was, like, still trying to figure out if we could do that. Because part of this is a detective story, and that idea of having flashbacks that informed it seemed fun, if we could make it make sense. And I didn't have the flashback with the brothers as boys, although I could see us have stumbled into that idea if I'd worked on it some more, because it seems natural. I didn't have Nadine as a character, and I didn't have an epilogue with a daughter. But everything else, the locations, the order of them, kind of overall what's kind of in course terms, what's happening, is all the work that I did. So, I mean, there's work done on a lot of that stuff. I mean, obviously us deciding to add the rope mechanic, for instance, that's something we were working on. Revamping the entire climbing system we were working on. You know, putting vehicles in was we were starting to work on. So, like, you know, I don't want people to think that it's like, wow, they threw away everything and start over. It's like, no. I mean, it's like tons of foundational work.
To wrap this all up, my goal in making this video was just to finally give people who were curious about the scrapped version of Uncharted 4 a glimpse into what the team were actually working on. There have been so many myths, rumours and assumptions made by fans over the years. I just hope this has at least cleared some of that up and helped to give a better idea of what was actually going on during development. Considering that there was just 2 years between the reboot and the game releasing, I'm surprised they managed to pull it off as well as they did. And look, yeah, it sucks that Amy didn't get to see her last Uncharted through to completion, and there will forever be a sort of dark cloud hanging over this game in regards to its history. But at the end of the day, I like the Uncharted 4 that we got. It's certainly not perfect, nothing really is, and I do want to see more of this original version, but only really in the same way that I want to see the Eric Stoltz version of Back to the Future. Not because it was necessarily any better than what we got, but simply because it was different. And that difference is interesting when you have the final product to compare it to. Hopefully someday we can learn even more about the Amy Hennig version of this game, and tie up some of those mysterious loose ends. But I suppose at the same time, it's best to not build your hopes up too much. We always want the things we can't have, and when that thing lives in your head for long enough, it can be easy to build it up as something bigger and better than it ever could be. And then, if, after all that time, you do get what you want, it can be hard for it to live up to the expectation. Trying to piece all of this together accurately has been quite difficult. There's plenty of stuff out there, but devoid of context, it can be a bit tough to see where it fits. For example, I'm not 100% certain where some of the later levels go. Each time I look at them, I think they should be arranged differently. It feels a bit like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, where you don't even know what the picture is meant to look like, and the pieces seem to change shape every time you come back to them. It's a big game, and this is a version of it that was never finished. So it's not really a surprise that there's some head scratchers. Over these last few years, I've searched far and wide for as much information as I could get my hands on. Despite that, I'm sure there's still some stuff out there that I've missed. If there's anything you know about that I haven't mentioned, feel free to put it in the comments. Or if you have anything bigger, like videos and images, email them to me at kempy32@gmail.com. If there's enough, maybe I could do a follow-up video. Until then, I do hope you've enjoyed what I put together. I would like to end this by saying thank you. Not only to the developers that slaved away for years working on this game, but also to those of you that waited patiently while I worked on this video. It's hard to think that that announcement video was in March last year, or that I've spent 8 years digging through this damn game. But time flies quickly, so remember to make the most of it while you can. I'll see you next time.